This video is sponsored by World of Tanks. World of Tanks is an epic online multiplayer game where you get to take control of real tanks from the 20th century and command them across real historic locations in an incredible strategic shooter. And the best part is, you can start playing right now for free. New players who register through the link in the video description to the Wargaming portal and use the code TANKTASTIC get a huge starter pack that includes the premium Soviet T-127 tank, 7 premium days, and 500 gold. So go to the video description and use that link to start downloading World of Tanks with that amazing starter pack right now. And we'll see you on the battlefield. You've finally done it! You've saved up enough money for a well-deserved vacation to Hawaii, surf capital of the world. As you hit the waves, you let all your troubles melt away in the tropical waters and warm summer sun. Yet unbeknownst to you, there's something else in the water with you, lurking just under the waves and doing slow circles below you. Deciding you'll take a dip below the surface to check out some tropical fish, you plunge under and are shocked to see a large fin shape a small distance from you, growing ever closer. Suddenly, you realize you're not staring at an oncoming playful dolphin, but a full-blown shark. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographics You vs. series. Today we're pitting you, the average Joe, against a mature adult shark. First, it's important to note that despite the terror that sharks elicit from humans, the simple fact is that you're more likely to die from getting struck by lightning than from being attacked by a shark. Shark fatalities in the US average about 1 every 2 years, yet an average of 51 people per year die due to lightning strikes. Next time you go to the beach, you should be 102 times more worried about what's happening in the clouds above than what might be lurking in the water below you. It's also important to note that humans are not prey for sharks. In fact, we're rather confusing for them. Imagine that for 400 million years, you and your ancestors have grown accustomed to eating fish and seals, and then suddenly in just the last few thousand years, the blink of an eye, in evolutionary terms, the seas suddenly started being invaded by funny little monkey-like creatures that swim terribly. Simply put, sharks just don't see human beings as edible because they don't quite understand what we are. In fact, the vast majority of shark attacks are mistakes, with the animal biting into a human and then very quickly spitting it back out in disgust. We don't taste the way fish or seal taste, and when a shark bites into our flesh, especially a great white, it's quick to spit our disgusting selves back out. There's also the fact that for larger sharks such as great whites, we're just not worth the effort. A large shark's typical prey is large fish, infant whales, or seals, and by comparison we have very little fat content versus the rich blubber in, say, a juicy seal. Such low energy content in our bodies just isn't worth the effort for a shark, and that's why many swimmers splash in waters every single day that are infested with sharks and are none the wiser for it. We've debated telling our European viewers this, but thought it best that you be informed. Great white sharks habituate all through the Mediterranean. That's right, despite the illusion that the Mediterranean is free of large predatory sharks. The only one of the 3 sharks that regularly attack human beings, the tiger, bull, and great white, that isn't present in the warm waters of southern Europe is the bull shark. Sorry for ruining your next holiday to sunny Spain, but you should know that you're in fact swimming in waters frequently patrolled by very dangerous sharks. Yet as we mentioned, you're simply not on the menu, so try not to worry about it. But today, you definitely are on the menu, and not just by 1 shark, but by 3 of them. As we mentioned, the species responsible for most shark attacks against humans are the great white, the tiger, and the bull shark. Of the 3, the great white is the one that captures our imagination. It's one of the longest-lived animals, with fossils dating back to 16 million years. Yet, when you're as evolved as a great white, you have little need for additional evolution. So it's no surprise that the great white has remained largely unchanged for so long. Great white sharks can measure up to 4.9 meters on average and have been identified in almost all of the world's oceans. If you think you'll just go ahead and take your next vacation in Alaska, where you can dip into the chilly waters free of worries, think again, because great whites have been spotted just shy of the Arctic Circle. Of the 3 killer sharks, great whites result in the most fatalities and yet attack the least. This disparity is down to the simple size of the great white, famous for taking exploratory bites on unidentified prey. Great whites have massive jaws that can end in death even after the shark spits its human prey out in disgust. The tiger shark is about 3/4 the size of a great white, but can grow up to over 5 meters in length at times. Famous for a pattern of dark stripes that run the course of its body, these telltale stripes fade as the shark matures, and they can often be mistaken for great whites. Tiger sharks are also known as the garbage cans of the ocean, and have been discovered with all manner of things in their stomachs, to include tires, plastic jugs, and sneakers. A tiger will eat just about anything, and their diet includes anything from crustaceans, fish, birds, all the way up to dolphins. The tiger is the second most dangerous shark for humans, and that's due both to its size and the fact that, unlike the great white, a tiger is more predisposed to actually eating a human being. Their range, however, is much more limited than the great whites, though they can be found off of most of the US's coasts, stretching down to South America and throughout Asian and African coasts. The most aggressive of the three species is the bull shark. Growing up to 2.4 meters, bull sharks are so called for their stocky shape, broad, flat snout, and their highly aggressive and unpredictable behavior. While divers will often swim alongside tiger sharks and even great whites, few divers in the world will risk hanging out around a bull shark for long. And with good reason, as it's believed that the majority of shark attacks against humans are actually the work of bull sharks, who are often misidentified. Luckily for most people, the bull shark's range is extremely limited and typically sticks close to the shores of the southern US, South America, Africa, and some parts of Asia. Unfortunately, if you make like TLC and thought you'd stick to the rivers and lakes that you're used to in order to avoid sharks altogether, you should know that bull sharks are often called river sharks due to their ability to survive for long periods of time in fresh water. In fact, bull sharks have been found as far inland as Alton, Illinois, or 1,100 kilometers from the ocean. So now that you know your enemy, how are you going to keep yourself off a shark's menu? First, try and keep the shark in your field of view at all times. All three sharks, great whites, bulls, and tigers, are ambush predators and do not like to risk taking on prey unless they have the advantage of surprise. This means never turning your back to the shark, as the moment it thinks you aren't aware of it anymore, it'll strike. This is a behavior shared by many animals, even those on land. For example, in India, villagers living close to the wilderness have routinely been preyed upon by tigers, who leap at them from behind and drag them off into the jungle. Then one day, villagers started wearing masks on their heads facing backwards, so it appeared as if the villager had a second face on the back of their head. Surprisingly, tiger attacks dropped precipitously after villagers literally grew eyes on the back of their heads, despite the fact that by now the tigers must have known that humans make for very easy prey. Yet predatory animals, to include sharks, are not very big risk takers. While a grazing animal can easily survive a serious wound or handicap, a predatory animal will die if it cannot hunt. Grass, after all, doesn't run away, yet a predatory shark needs every ounce of muscle on its body to outrun and overpower fleeing prey. If a shark is wounded, it risks not being able to give a hunt at all, and that might lead to starvation. What that means is that a predator, it turns out, is incredibly risk-averse. So keep your shark in eyesight at all times, and don't let it think it's ever got the drop on you. Simple enough, right? Next, you're going to want to make sure that you remain calm. Panicky behavior will mimic the desperate struggling of injured prey and only encourage the shark to attack, making the shark think that you're too weak to fight back. Sadly, the shark is right anyway. You are too pathetically weak to fight off a shark attack, but no need to let it know that. Instead of flopping and splashing in a desperate attempt to get back to dry land, simply relax and slowly make your way back toward the beach. Up against a hungry shark, you're not in a battle of confidence. The more confidence you have, the less the shark will have that you're not dangerous prey. Remember, to the shark, you are weird and strange. Sharks didn't evolve eating humans, so the shark has no clue what you're actually capable of and is going to be wary of any dangerous defenses you might have. Let's say, however, that this particular shark is a bit bolder than the rest, and he's coming in for a bite. First of all, forget the advice you've heard all your life of going for the eyes. Most sharks have special lenses that slide into place as it bites down on prey, and they're there exactly to protect the eyes from thrashing prey. You're going to do very little damage to the protected eyes, but most importantly, you've got a pretty strong chance of simply sticking your hands into the shark's gaping mouth, full of razor-sharp teeth. Honestly, don't make the shark's job any easier than it already is. Instead of going for the eyes, you're going to want to reach along the shark's side until you hit the gills, and those are what you want to attack. For sharks, gills are as important as the lungs are to us, and grabbing a handful of gills and yanking is the fish equivalent of getting punched in the throat. If you think that's not so big a deal when you're fighting for your life, go ahead and give yourself a solid little tap on the Adam's apple and then tell us how you feel afterwards. Now imagine taking a full force blow there. The moment you grab the shark's gill slits, it is absolutely going to spit you out and try to get away. Its response is no different than when you have to hold your breath and are running out of air, desperately taking a breath of air in a panic. Having proven that you're not easy prey, you're now going to want to make sure you get out of the water ASAP. Normally in this series, we teach you how to defeat your opponent, not just how to survive it and get away. Yet the truth is that if you were in a one-on-one deathmatch with a shark, well, you lose. You're just not going to survive hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary perfection. The other sad truth is that sharks are already losing a deathmatch against humans, with them falling prey to long lines and fishing nets and being pushed ever closer to extinction every day. If that wasn't enough, the absolutely pointless practice of finning, or catching the sharks and cutting off their fins while dumping them back in the ocean still alive, is driving the sharks that do remain toward extinction in a hurry. Every year, tens of millions of sharks are caught and finned. Also that their inedible appendages can sit in the soup bowls of customers across Southeast Asia who pay hundreds of dollars for the privilege of eating crappy soup, perpetuating a barbarically cruel fishing practice and driving animals that have survived every major extinction event on Earth to their own extinction. So relax, because you've already won this deathmatch just by doing nothing. Though we'd love to see sharks start tearing the limbs off of humans before tossing them back alive onto the beach, just so they can make human arm and leg soup. Will you ever go back into the water again, knowing sharks are literally everywhere? Why do people pay so much money for dumb soup? Let us know in the comments. Also, make sure to check out our other video, You versus 100 Baby Sharks. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.